Good evening, welcome to my channel. My name is David Okon. I've been talking about the cost of living. Now I'm linking the cost of living with Great Britain, United Kingdom. You may ask the relevance of the cost of living with the United Kingdom. United Kingdom led the world in history and in the contemporary globe when they created the last empire. Some people call it Roman Empire, but Britain was the last empire. But it inherited that empire from Rome, and Rome inherited that empire from Persia from Babylon, and civilization have been carried forward from generation to generation, and United Kingdom has been at the heart of modern civilization. Now we know the same process of this capitalism is being the globalization, the global economic system. In the globe, we are preparing the world to become one country with a world without border, whether you are in Africa, whether you are in Europe or America. We are going to be one country, one currency, one trade. And like I said, trade is coming to an end when technology matures perfectly. Because the thing about technology, it has potential to be more perfect in terms of development. And as soon as that happens, because you see, the outlook of the economy is actually about development. It's about money, about wealth. It's about technology. It's about medicine and things like that. Transportation. Housing. I said what medicine. Transportation, employment. These are actually factors of development. But you see, another wing of development or progress is actually culture. Culture is what teaches people how to behave well. And if we leave culture out of our progress and we only focus on development like we're doing now, we're going to have a lot of wealth. We're going to have technology. And technology is going to, what technology is going to do for us is create wealth, good and services, products, because that's the whole point about the economy. And the economy is also about trade. And as soon as we create technology which actually produce goods and services and no extra cost, theoretically, but also maybe in practice, in many ways, we are going to operate society which doesn't sell or buy. As soon as that stops, as soon as we stop using money of any sort, whether cryptocurrency, whether cash, whatever money, digital currency, whatever you call them, the time will come when money will cease to exist, because technology will produce goods at no extra cost, which means there will be abundance of products, goods and services, which can be provided at no extra cost, which means you don't charge for it, and machine will produce the product day and night. So there will be so many things. So if trade stops, then the economy will also stop. That's what I'm trying to say. So the development will still continue, because we will be needing, food, clean air, we need housing, but this will be available for free. Because technology will be doing the work. Employment will be a thing of the past. But I'm talking about the future. But the signs are already in existence. As I speak now, there is I heard that, I am not sure about it, I heard that there is actually there is mechanical incubators. Of course, incubators are actually mechanical. Or as always, they are medical. They are mass producing. The way I hear people say, I'm not sure about it. The society, I mean the government, private government, research development institutions. These are governments. They are governments in their own right. So these governments are producing incubators, which it will be used to produce babies instead of the wombs. In other words, they are actually producing in experimental context. They are producing artificial wombs. So mothers, human mothers, don't have to carry babies in their wombs, because wombs will be artificialized. And the other thing is, I understand vaguely but not clearly. I don't have the detail. I understand some scientists now are actually looking for synthetic DNA, and when that synthetic DNA is produced, we are going to have synthetic, if it is actually in existence, as a chemical product, synthetic chemical product for fingerprinting, for creating life, which is actually synthetic. Then we are looking at a situation of creating from synthetic DNA. We are looking at a situation of creating synthetic cells. As soon as we create cells, including human cells, or animal cells, plant cells, at synthetic level, then we are going to start to create things like blood, synthetic tissues, blood tissues, organic tissues. And then we begin to create actually organs. From tissues we create organs. Organs create bodies. So you will see actually human flesh, or even cows, goats, which are actually not natural. They are synthetic. Which means they are artificially produced. And these may or may not be related to now the surge in trying to promote artificial intelligence, which is actually part of the functions. And you talk about nanotechnology, which actually will influence materials, will also influence technology in its own right. So we humans are creators, we are builders. We can create anything we want to create, and that is a possibility. And we will probably be able to bring life back to life, regenerative health, health product. There are, with nanotechnology, we are looking to create vehicles which are actually not seen. They are invisible because they are so small. They are bacteria. These bacteria, which are also can be is said to be is most likely to be synthetic. They are going to be bacterial vehicles which can be used for medical purposes to treat cells, DNA, they will. You don't need to pray. You just release them into space and instruct them, with magnetism and all this, to go and treat maybe cancer from. You don't even see it. You don't feel you are being treated, but because you don't see it, it's like part of the hair. But it's medicine. But the same medical technology, which is actually so micro, so small, can also be used like weapons. It can actually, somebody who want to bomb you up can release it in a room like this, and it goes in and you explode from within. We are seeing it now in science fiction. People like melts away. People just melt away. So we can use materials, we can use technology, science as tools for peace, or we can use it for for violence and warfare. So the difference between misusing or using technology or any other product we produce is whether or not we are culturally educated. So culture, in my opinion, in terms of progress, culture is the most important element and actually relate to education. The law is now operational to try and force society to behave in one way or the other. The problem of the law is that whoever controls it actually can use it for whatever reason. The law is now being used to promote murders, destruction. The police, the military, including terrorists. The difference between terrorists and conventional military and security system is that the one which is terrorist are actually illegal, and the other is actually legalized. So legalized killing, like the police carrying a firearm can shoot somebody. Actually, the essence of policing is actually criminality. Every police officer is a criminal. The difference between a police officer and a criminal on the street, the police is actually professionally trained to be a criminal, and therefore is legalized. The police actually, the entire estate of the police across the globe, not just in one country, including even in the UK, the entire estate is actually is a criminal enterprise, which is actually legalized crime. So in effect, it's not crime, but it is crime. They are trained to commit crime. Everything we are arrested for doing, they do it legally, including shooting people dead, including restraining people, including breaking into the houses, including arresting people. That would be an assault, including stopping people, interfering in people's life. But the law allows them to do that. So the law is itself a form of crime, which has been legalized. This is necessary. It's a necessary evil. The law is a necessary evil because we are culturally incompetent. Which means we are actually uneducated as human species. We need to go back to school, every one of us, because you see, if orderliness has to be enforced legally, then it's a matter of time that all hell is going to break loose. And this is the reality. And that's why every day you turn on the news, wherever you turn it, on social media, on your computer, like on television, somebody somewhere is fighting. The young people are fighting. The law is trying to catch up with them. But the law of the future, we are going to get robots on the streets. We need to improve their mental and physical dexterity, which is now what is lacking fundamentally. And I believe their artificial intelligence architecture and architects are actually trying to achieve, technological equivalence of human performance in terms of dexterity, mentally and physically. Once that is achieved, there is a potential that in terms of performance and technology, machine will outperform humans to the effect that humans will no longer be employable in any sector. Medicine, law, the security sector, and this will happen. It's a matter of when. So it are now happening. Robots are now on the increase, and in the next 10, 20, 50 years, some of these things I'm talking about will start happening, and less humans are going to be employed in any sector. Actually, humans will not even produce children. Machine will produce human children if humans are still there. If we don't, with all these powers, technology, and all these other aspects of the things I'm talking about, If we don't learn culture, we are sitting on a ticking time bomb in terms of technology, engineering, science, everything we use. Without culture, without understanding the value of humanity, respect, with poor education in terms of humanity, once we focus on the developmental equivalence of progress alone, then we are going to weaponize everything, including food. You eat food at your own risk, and if we come to that stage, then humanity will face extinction. And that is why I've been talking a lot about violence. I've been connecting violence with the cost of living. The cost of living is evidence of social violence, a cultural failure. Because you see, at least at this period, at least in the developed country, at least in the Western world being the region where capitalism is practiced the most, whether the market economy is at its most robust. These are areas and regions where there is a lot of wealth being actually owned by a few individuals, maybe 5 or 10% of the population. This is proof that the system is violent because it is being abused by people who are culturally illiterate. Talk about cultural illiteracy, everybody is the same. We are all in it together. So it's a humanitarian ticking time bomb failing to come to grips with our culture, which is actually a dedication of personality, of producing character. And you give a gun to an adult who is culturally mature, then you bring safety. You look at the police, the military, and they are actually infants in terms of culture. They have no sense of value, especially sense of valuing humanity. They have no respect. You see, a lot of young people, you don't need to carry a gun. What people say, what comes out of our mouth, our lips, including everybody. I'm not judging any one person. I'm just judging humanity. And I'm not even judging, I'm just making a comment, because to be a judge, you have to be qualified. You have to be merited to judge. If I'm also a subject of cultural failure, how am I going to judge anybody? So it is actually correct to suggest that nobody should be the judge of anybody. But we have judges everywhere. Music festival, competitions, sports, science, technology, the courts, the courts of law, the courts of parliament, the courts of government, civil service, the political government, prime minister. Prime minister is a judge, political judge is an executive judge in a country like Britain or whatever, wherever, whoever is responsible for governance, the national state government, they are judges. The King of England is our judge. He's the supreme judge of the executive and constitutional authority. And I'm trying to say this so that when I try to connect a country with the cost of living, I am trying to open our minds so that we begin to see life in a different way. So crisis like the cost of living is an opportunity for us to start learning things in new ways. The government have said we should take responsibility for our life. And what is saying there that we should stop being children. We should become adults. The problem with the government and including prime minister, president, and maybe military police commanders, they are all children. Because they are not qualified to be adults. Because of cultural failure, we still go to wars. That is a proof. I mean, Putin, how can you call Putin and Zelensky? Volodymyr Zelensky and what is Putin's full name? Vladimir. Is it? I mean, what is Putin's name? I don't even know. We call him Putin. These people are heads of state, and they are fighting like children. Like children even don't fight like that. Even animals don't fight like these people. America has been fighting all over. Britain, I'm talking about Britain. Now Britain created its country through war. Europe, Africa, Middle East, the globe, the global system, the world is created by war. So the people who lead, people who rule, are actually infants in terms of culture. We may be adults in terms of development, because the evidence is that there is a lot of wealth. So much wealth that in the world, that even in Africa, nobody should be in poverty. I'm not talking about people being wealthy. I'm talking about people getting out of poverty and living a normal life, a peaceful life in terms of development. Whether we are rich or poor, we need to focus on development. And it doesn't matter how much development we succeed to do. As long as we are still culturally bankrupt, backward, people will continue to suffer. And that's what I'm trying to talk about all along. I'm trying to use the cost of living to illustrate human situation, social situation, political situation, economic, environmental, and all these factors we know about in terms of development, but especially in terms of education, educating character, educating the person, the personality, the person who value humanity, who respect humanity. If you value something, you respect them, you care about them, there would not be political situation to create a lot of problems, because that's what politicians are now doing. They're playing politics with political issues, with human issues, and that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to talk about, with the hope that we will come to terms with our life. The reason I'm actually talking, I believe that we can change, and that is the most important statement I've made on this video so far. We can change. We can change to become wild animals, or we can become perfect humans who know exactly how to live peacefully. And so the cost of living is about peace, but right now it's about violence. So if we can prosecute violence the way we are doing now, it also means that we can actually make peace, and that is a sign of hope. But we need to make a choice now. Listen to this video, we need to really make decisions. Are we going to be peaceful, or we are going to be violent? I say let us choose peace over violence. It is the way we think. If we think peace, then we begin to pursue avenues of peace. If we continue thinking violence, war, because our minds decide what we become. So if those in power, the Labour Party in the UK, the Conservative Liberal Democrats in the UK, and the Republicans, Democrats in America, and all the other communities, political communities, and religious, social communities, if they can come together and begin to talk in one language, peace, then we will begin to see changes within development immediately, where people will begin to get out of poverty, especially food and energy poverty. And the cost of living is a betrayal of our promises of poverty eradication. We cannot speak of poverty eradication with a crisis like the cost of living. It's a shameful thing. I mean, every politician, every leader, whether you are president, prime minister, or a military or political or security leader, and also the followers, ordinary people should really think again, because sometimes we think the governments are superhuman. Maybe they are in terms of development, but in terms of culture, we are probably more or less the same level. And culture is more important than development, because culture deals with human progress, um, the way human think. You can think your way out of death. You can, if we learn to use our minds to think, we can think away from aging. We can think about away from death, and that's what I believe. And this is why I keep saying this over and over. In whatever context I try to discuss the cost of living as a crisis. The cost of living, apart from being topical, is actually fundamental because it explains to us the state and status of our society. I've been, this is probably the second video now. I'm looking at United Kingdom, how it was created, how it is doing now. You know, it's a global power. It's one of the most powerful countries, probably the most powerful country in the world. Is actually the United Kingdom. Technology, military, economic, finance. Actually, I predict, as maybe many other people, that London as a city is going to lead in global finance. And if it leads in global finance, it's also going to lead economically and in every other way. So watch out for London, watch out for the UK. UK is probably the most important country today on earth. We may be looking at America, we may be looking at China or the European Union, but let us pay attention to Britain, because I am an African. I grew up in school and in my community in Africa being literally forced. English was imposed on me as a student in Africa. Because if you don't learn English in Africa, you don't, and French, but more so English. If you don't learn English, even today, you don't know English, you're going to be left behind. The way to succeed is to learn how to speak English. And that is not a small thing in terms of cultural development. You know, the language of development, so to speak. You know, English as a language, as a tool of cultural development. That's why the English are probably the most important group of people on earth, the number one. I mean, if everybody speaks your language, including the French are very proud of their culture. Germans speak English. The World Wide Web is an English language, it's an English word. So if you don't really use English, you don't access the internet, unless you are probably Chinese. I don't think Chinese are now learning English. And this is something important in terms of globalization and also in terms of world peace. But it's also important in terms of world catastrophe. Because if English mess it up, if England and the countries surrounding England, Great Britain, United Kingdom, Europe, the West, the developed world, Middle East, Africa. If we are not careful, we're going to mess it up big time. And the answer to avoid messing up is actually going back to basic culturally. I've been saying this over and over and again. Leave a comment below. And thank you so much, everyone who have been supporting me. If you have been subscribing, if you have been viewing, watching the videos, clicking like, and clicking notification bell to not miss any new video. We are still a very small project. We are slow, but we are getting there. We are very consistent, and it's very challenging. I want my YouTube channel to grow. The best way to support growth is actually to subscribe. But as we have seen, the world of YouTube and perhaps social media is full of mysteries. But we are getting there, and if you're watching, I'm so grateful. Subscribe to this channel, support it, and let us look at Britain. We are today going to look at the history. We are going to look at the formation of the United Kingdom, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the history of the British Isles. So, prior to the Treaty of Union, the history of England, the history of Wales, history of Scotland, and the history of Ireland. There are features, cultural features, maybe spiritual features, supernatural features, are actually markers of the English, the British landmarks, mountains, hills, valleys, rivers, agriculture, things like Stonehenge in Wiltshire. Is a ring of stones, each about 4 meters, 13 feet, 2 meters or 7 feet wide and 25 tons, erected in 2400 and 2200 BC. That was the Stonehenge is a very important feature for cultural, probably tourist site. I don't know, Stonehenge is really important in this country. Settlement by automatically modern humans of what was to become the United Kingdom occurred in waves beginning by about 30 years ago. By the end of the region's prehistoric period, the population is thought to have belonged in the main to a culture termed Insular Celtic, comprising Brittonic Britain and Gaelic Ireland. The Roman baths in Bath, as in Somerset, are well preserved, Thermae from Roman Britain. So Britain was once part of the Roman Empire. The Roman conquest beginning in 43 AD, and the 400 years rule of southern Britain was followed by an invasion of Germanic Anglo-Saxon settlers, reducing the Brittonic area mainly to what was to become Wales, Cornwall, and until the latter stages of the Anglo-Saxon settlement, the Hen, Oaklet, Northern England, and parts of southern Scotland. Northern England is quite inimical to the north, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and these places are actually divided artificially. They are very connected in terms of the people of England and Great Britain, for that matter, and most of the regions settled by the Anglo-Saxons became unified as the United Kingdom of England in the 10th century. Meanwhile, Gaelic speakers in northwest Britain will connection to the northeast of Ireland, and traditionally supposed to have migrated from there in the 5th century, united with the Picts to create the Kingdom of Scotland in the 9th century. So we're talking over Bayeux tapestries depicting the Battle of Hastings 1066 and events leading to it. In 1066, the Normans invaded England from northern France. After conquering England, they seized large parts of Wales, conquered much of Ireland, and were invited to settle in Scotland, bringing to each country feudalism on the northern French model and Norman French culture. The Anglo-Norman ruling class, greatly influenced but eventually assimilated with each of the local cultures. Subsequent medieval English kings completed the conquest of Wales and made unsuccessful attempts to annex Scotland, asserting its independence in the 1320s Declaration of Arbroath. Scotland mainland in its independence theatre, albeit in near constant conflict with England. The English monarch, through inheritance of substantial territories in France and claims to the French crown, were also heavily involved in the conflicts in France, most notably the 100 Years' War, while the kings of Scots were in an alliance with the French during this period. Early modern Britain saw religious conflict resulting from the Reformation and the introduction of Protestant state churches in each country. The English Reformation ushered in the political, constitutional, and social and cultural change in the 16th century. These are some of the historical panoply which actually created what we now know as modern-day Britain. Moreover, it defined a national identity for England and slowly but profoundly changed people's religious beliefs and established the Church of England. Wales was fully incorporated into Kingdom of England, and Ireland was constituted as a kingdom in personal union with the English crown. So this is the timeline, the history of the United Kingdom in what was to become Northern Ireland, the lands of the independent Catholic Gaelic nobility were confiscated and given to the Protestant settlers from England and Scotland. In 1603, the kingdoms of England, Scotland, and Ireland were united in a personal union when James VI, King of Scots, inherited the crowns of England and Ireland and moved his court from Edinburgh to London. Each country nevertheless remained a separate political entity and retained its separate political, legal, and religious institutions. In the mid-17th century, all three kingdoms were involved in a series of connected wars, including the English Civil War, which led to the temporary overthrow of the monarchy with the execution of King Charles I and the establishment of the short-lived Unitary Republic of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Although the monarchy was restored, the interregnum, along with the Glorious Revolution of 1688, the subsequent Bill of Rights 1689 in England, and Claim of Rights Act 1969 in Scotland ensured that, unlike much of the rest of Europe, royal absolutism would not prevail, and a professed Catholic could never accede to the throne. So hostility to Catholicism in England had its genesis in the past. The British Constitution would develop on the basis of constitutional monarchy and parliamentary system. With the founding of the Royal Society in 1660, science was greatly encouraged. So the kind of the evolving of the scientific age in every aspect of society, institutionally, in terms of development, like I said at the introductory stage of this process. With the founding of the Royal Society in 1660, science was greatly encouraged. During this period, particularly in England, the development of naval power and the interest in voyages of discovery led to the acquisition and settlement of overseas colonies, particularly in North America and the Caribbean. So, if you talk of the British Columbus, for example, these are actually traditions. If you look at the estates of the American countries, they are essentially European, particularly England, English, in their essence. That's the language spoken in the United States of America, the language is spoken in Canada. So previous attempts at uniting the two kingdoms within Great Britain in 1606 and 1667 and in 1689 proved unsuccessful. The attempt initiated in 1705 led to the Treaty of Union of 1706 being agreed and ratified by both parliaments. This actually was the sowing of the seed in what we now see as the global economic projects and the empires of the world coming together, congregating together to form what we now know as globalization. Kingdom of Great Britain, Treaty of Union, and Kingdom of Great Britain. These are actually infrastructure of historical timeline, laws. When you talk of treaties, law which actually also associated with policy, used to establish institution historical, social institution, political, economic. The Treaty of Union led to a united kingdom of all of Great Britain. On the 1st of May 1707, the Kingdom of Great Britain was formed, the result of Acts of Union 1707 being passed by the parliaments of England and Wales and Scotland to ratify the 1706 Treaty of Union and so unite the two kingdoms. So these processes are looking pretty, but treaties normally follow conflict of interest and maybe of different other things. In the 18th century, cabinet government developed under Robert Walpole in practice the first prime minister between 1721 and 1742. A series of Jacobite upsprings sought to remove the Protestant House of Hanover from the British throne and restore the Catholic House of Stuart. So, in as much as progress occurred, there were also the underlying conflict, and conflict with wars produces crisis, which is what I'm trying to talk about, linking it with the current crisis of the cost of living. It's about war and conflict. A series of Jacobite uprisings sought to remove the Protestant House of Hanover from the British throne and restore the Catholic House of Stuart. The Jacobites were finally defeated at the Battle of Culloden in 1746, after which the Scottish Highlanders were forcibly assimilated into the rest of Scotland by revoking the feudal independence of clan chiefs. The British colonists in North America that broke away from Britain in the American War of Independence became the United States of America, recognized by Britain in 1786. British imperial ambition turned towards Asia, particularly into India. Britain played a leading part in the Atlantic slave trade, mainly between 1662 and 1807, when British when British colonial slave ships transported nearly 3.3 million slaves from Africa. So Britain was actually involved in slave trade. The slaves were taken to work on plantations in British possessions, principally in the Caribbean, but also in North America. So you see, there was a connecting. There was there's an intricate network of trade, including slave trade, between Europe, America, and the globe. So the process of globalization actually started in the past. In the 19th century, it was actually, it was extremely active. However, with pressure from the abolitionism movements, parliaments banned the trade in 1807, banned slavery in the British Empire in 1843, and Britain took a role in the movement to abolish slavery worldwide through the blockade of Africa and pressing other nations to end their trade with a sense of treaty, with a series of treaties. So we talk about treaties again. The promulgating of these infrastructures actually are done in the name of peace. But at the heart of every human endeavor is power. And that's what we probably will be seeing in every material we are going to go through. And also we could probably argue that the incident of the cost of living has something to do with power. People always want power and influence. They want to rule over the world. They want to rule over other people, class of people who will always do anything to be in power. And you need to know that power is actually the driving force behind power is actually the desire to maintain a status quo, which involved actually human slavery and slavery generally, or even slavery of animals or of nature. We use resources for whatever we can find to create systems and institutions, spaces for power dominance. And in part, this is actually a survival approach, because if you are a master, you don't work. You rule over everyone and over everything. This is happening now. Now people in the ruling class, they do not work until technology comes. But if technology comes and we still have human communities who are desiring to rule over other people, then what we're going to get is we're using technology to rule over other people, because that is what we want. We want power to load it over other people. So let us look at the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, the history of the United Kingdom, Acts of Union 1800, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. So look at that. The term United Kingdom became official in 1801 when the parliaments of Great Britain and Ireland each passed an act of union uniting the two kingdoms and creating the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. HMS Victory was Lord Nelson's flagship at the victory at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. Look about war, ships. That also means human beings are fighting each other. We're not talking about wild animals. Wild animals normally run away from people. People fight each other. So we talk about cultural failure. we should change. Otherwise, we're going to go extinct. Whatever we get, we use it for war. After the defeat of France at the hand of the French Revolutionary Wars and Napoleonic wars of 1792 to 1815, the United Kingdom emerged as the principal naval and imperial power of the 19th century, with London the largest city in the world from about 1830. We are from the start of this program, we talked about the preponderance of the United Kingdom in the first place, and in the second, London, the city now of London, within the service industrial revolution, as we have it these days, in this our modern days. Across the globe, the service economy leading, the financial system, the financial infrastructure, financial estates is leading, and Britain is at the forefront as we speak. Unchallenged at sea, British dominance was later described as Pax Britannica, British peace. Peace is always the language of progress, the peace to justify every act of battles, of warfare, the political warfare, the military, you name it. We always stand behind peace, and it is anybody's case that if you want to get peace, then you fight. Most people will associate war with war. You know, people suffer, people die, people are robbed. You know, some people are enslaved. So peace is actually a relative term. It's not absolute. If you win a war, you gain peace as a ruling master. And if you actually defeat somebody, the person you defeat becomes your slave. And that has always been consistently happening at every level of society, because that's how we built what we now call, we now know as a modern civilization. So Britain maintained its status of greatness and challenge and see British dominance was later described as Pax Britannica. Pax Britannica, British peace, as they call it, a period of relative peace among the great powers, 1815-1914, during which British Empire became the global hegemony and adopted the role of a global policeman. That was what was happening now in the recent periods of history. By the time of the Great Exhibition of 1851, Britain was described as the workshop of the world. From 1853 to 1856, Britain took part in the Crimea War, allied with the Ottoman Empire in the fight against the Russian Empire, and participating in the naval battles of the Baltic Sea, known as the Alan War, in the Gulf of Bosnia and the Gulf of Finland, among others. The British Empire was expanded to include India, large parts of Africa, and many other territories throughout the world. Alongside the formal control it exerted over its own colonies, British dominance over much of world trade meant that it effectively controlled the economies of many regions, such as Asia and Latin America. Political attitude favored free trade and laissez-faire policies, and gradually widening of the voting franchise. During the century of population increase at the dramatic rate, accompanied by rapid urbanization causing significant social and economic stresses. To seek new markets and sources of raw materials, the Conservative Party under Disraeli launched a period of imperialist expansion in Egypt, South Africa, and elsewhere. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand became self-governing dominions. After the turn of the century, Britain's industrial dominance was challenged by Germany and the United States. Social reform and home rule for Ireland were important domestic issues after the 1900. The Labour Party emerged from all alliance of trade unions and small socialist groups in 1900, and the suffragettes campaigned from before 1914 for women's right to vote. We're going to look at what was and partition of Ireland, looking at the history of the United Kingdom. History of the United Kingdom. Looking at the history of the United Kingdom during the First World War, partition of Ireland, interwar Britain and United Kingdom, home front during the World War II. We are going to look at risks being laid during the Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph in Whitehall. This is a practice, actually a ritual of warfare during peacetime to remember periods and seasons of war in history and also in contemporary periods. Britain was one of the principal allies that fought against the Central Powers in the First World War between 1914 and 1918. Alongside their French, Russian, and after 1917 American counterparts, British armed forces were engaged across much of the British Empire and in several regions of Europe, particularly on the Western Front. The high fatalities of French warfare caused the loss of much of a generation of men, with lasting social effects in the nation and a great disruption in the social order. Normally, when there are wars such as seen during the world wars, or different sectors and also formats of war, what you get is actually you experience a certain class of people who are actually required to work for living, the many, and also you will see the few who are actually born to rule the world are actually not going to war. Senior officers, we find that mainly children of poor people are taken into war even to this day. And a lot of rich people don't really have to go in, especially in modern times. In those days, there was a period of conscription, which means forceful drafting of citizens across the globe to go and fight during emergencies, different emergencies in different theaters of wars. And that had always been happening, perhaps in many other countries. Maybe in Israel, people are actually compulsorily required still to draft to serve in the armed forces. And when the Conservatives in the UK gained power recently, and even now there is a suggestion that a section of society should be required to join the armed forces to serve mostly without pay. Actually, give something back to your community. And these languages and this attitude is actually to get people to work without pay. And that also explains the slave nature of violence in what we call civilization, which is actually a contradiction in terms, because you cannot be civilized when you are actually using violence as a language of change. And this is actually evidence, like I said in the previous times, evidence of cultural failure. So let us go back to look at these incidences, historical incidences occurring when we began to create Britain as a modern society. The high fatalities of trench warfare caused the loss of much of a generation of men, with lasting social effects in the nation and a great disruption in social order. People come home insane. We humans are not designed to kill other humans. We come home with mental illness. We watch horror movies. Today we fight at social medias, we fight at main media, the Hollywood warfare, Bollywood, Nollywood, the movies, games for children. Some of children's games I can't even play. It's so violent. Look at society being, those in power are actually right now preparing for war by teaching children how to fight. That's what you get in a society of this sort, and nothing changes unless it changes. The high fatality as you were after the war, Britain became a permanent member of the Executive Council of the League of Nations and received a mandate over a number of former German and Ottoman colonies. The British Empire reached its greatest extent, covering a fifth of the world's land surface and a quarter of its population. Britain has suffered 2.5 million casualties and finished the war with a huge national debt. The consequences of the war persuaded the government to expand the right to vote in national and local elections with the Representation of the People's Act of 1918. By the mid-1920s, most of the British population could listen to BBC radio programs. Experimental television broadcasts began in 1929, and the first scheduled BBC television service commenced in 1936. The rise of Irish nationalism and the disputes within Ireland over the terms of Irish Home Rule led eventually to the partition of the Ireland in 1921. The Irish Free State became independent initially with Dominion status in 1922 and unambiguously independent in 1931. Northern Ireland remained part of the United Kingdom. The 1928 Equal Franchise Act gave women electoral equality with men in national elections. A wave of strikes in the mid-1920s culminated in the general strike of 1926. Britain had still not recovered from the effects of the First World War when the Great Depression of 1929 and 1932 occurred. This led to the considerable unemployment and the hardship in the whole industrial areas, as well as the political and social unrest in the 1930s with the rising membership in communism and socialist parties. Now we are looking at the effect of crisis creating poverty, very similar to what we now see with the cost of living crisis. It is the same then, it is the same now, perhaps getting worse now. The implication now is even worse because right now we have more wealth than we had then. And like I said in the opening of this discussion, I said clearly that there is no basis for anyone in the world now to be experiencing poverty. So a coalition government was formed in 1931. Let us look at certain materials, Spitfire and Hurricane. I can see picture illustration here. has flown in the Battle of Britain during World War II. So some of us remember the history of World War One and Two, and nevertheless, Britain was a very wealthy country, formidable in arms, ruthless in pursuit of its interests, and sitting at the heart of a global production system. So, like I said in the opening, we have been fighting for natural resources and taking land and dispossessing the weak, and creating what is now a modern day jungle where the fittest are born to survive at the expense of the weak. So we are revisiting the manner of Darwin Charles, who was actually, I think he was a biological theorist, who created the theory of evolution, that the natural selection theory, the principle that the weak are there to be devoured by the strong. And so the rich of the modern time in the jungle of capitalism, in the marketized jungle of capitalism, are the ones to survive. And there's a theory of economics theory to say resources are finite, which means it can be depleted. There's no sense of infinity to do with resources. That's why you hear the Conservative Party say money do not grow on trees. But it appears to me that when the Conservative parties are intent on spending money to put it into the hands of the super rich, money certainly appears on trees, as it were. And I'm not saying this in any way to vilify the Conservative Party, because I know every political class is doing the same thing. They are practicing economic violence, given now that the economy now is the language of rule, is actually the new guns and bombs. Wealth is now the new guns and bombs of the new age. And after Nazi Germany invaded Poland, Britain entered the Second World War by declaring war on Germany in 1939. Winston Churchill became Prime Minister and head of a coalition government in 1940. Despite the defeat of its European allies in the first year of the war, Britain and its empire continued the war against Germany. Churchill engaged industry, scientists, and engineers to advise and support the government and the military in the prosecution of the war effort. Just like I said a few minutes ago, in 1940, the Royal Air Force defeated the German Luftwaffe in a struggle for control of the skies in the Battle of Britain. Urban areas suffered heavy bombing during the Blitz. The Grand Alliance of Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union formed in 1941, leading the Allies against the Axis of Powers. There were eventual hard-fought victories in the Battle of the Atlantic, the North Africa Campaign, and the Italian Campaign. British forces played an important role in the Normandy landings of 1944 and the liberation of Europe, achieved with its allies, the United States and the Soviet Union and other allied countries. The British Army led the Burma campaign against Japan, and the British Pacific Fleet fought Japan at sea. The British scientists contributed to the Manhattan Project to design a nuclear weapon, which led to the surrender of Japan. Thank you for watching this video. We are going to stop here. Next time we are going to carry on with this dispensation, with this discourse, to illustrate history and the events thereat. as it actually mirrors what is now happening in the contemporary period. At the time of war, especially the World War, there were cost of living crisis, which was mentioned, or it might not have been mentioned. But today, perhaps luckily or otherwise, we have managed to mention the cost of living as a crisis, and we are trying to address it. And we have spoken severally about the cost of living, and we continue to do this for you watching the video. If you watch this video, please subscribe to the channel, support this channel, leave a comment. I want to know what you're thinking, and let us carry on, share with family and friends. And if you know people who actually collaborate, actually support my channel by speaking to them on my behalf. So I want this channel to grow. People who can support me, who are now established in the market. If you are out there, if you're watching this video, please try and probably get in contact with me. I don't know how. Maybe you can email me. I've got my email address. Contact me then, and maybe you can leave your mobile number and speak to you so that we can see how to work together, helping each other like a family of peace, family of progress, family of humanity. And my argument in this space and elsewhere has been about peace, because peace is is at the heart of our survival strategy. It's the only thing we should be thinking more of in now, our cultural progress, which has been lacking and evidenced by series and series of wars in history and also in modern times. Thank you. Speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.